How's going, guys? Welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the eternal Shards of Radiance in Steven Universe? Part 2. Huge shout out to CrimsonTale for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. White! White! Naruto exclaimed. He could barely keep still, bursting with excitement. Guess what? He held a device in his hands. A screen shaped like a diamond. It glowed brightly in his dark room, showering him with rays of light. He could see her through this communication device, something that, at first, had shocked him to the core. But he'd since grown accustomed to such technologies, wielding it now without a second thought. What is it? She inquired softly. Behind her, a barren landscape could be seen. The moon, he realized. Naruto grinned, holding up a piece of fabric with metal attached. I got my headband, he revealed. I used the shadow clone jutsu, and Irika-sensei was so shocked. She smiled in return. Wonderful, the being said. She leaned back, typing something. Though this custom eludes me, I can see that it makes you very happy. You bet it does, he replied. I'm going to be Hokage. And then, everyone will have to acknowledge me. White paused at his words. But I have already acknowledged you, she stated. Why, yeah, I know, but this is different. Different, you say? She continued. He swallowed, taking in the confused expression on her face. White tilted her head. Am I not enough? It was like waking from a dream she never had, like opening her eyes to a world she always knew. The molten rock around her burned hot, shimmering brilliantly. She was surrounded by light, wrapped in light, held by light. A vision befell her, and she could see the image of a yellow diamond, but just briefly. And suddenly, her body began to take form. First her head, then her torso. Lastly, her limbs. She soon felt the urge to move, to break free from this stone prison. The process took only moments, but it felt like an eternity. A bit of effort, and finally, a luminous explosion propelled her forward. She found her footing easily enough, stumbling slightly, but maintaining her balance. Around her was a canyon, surrounded by endless holes. She wasn't the first to emerge, nor was she the last. Many others, similar in appearance to her, converged below, clustering into groups. Instead of moving to her group, Peridot paused to inspect herself. From her little green hands and feet, to her slender physique. She slid tentative fingers down her body, down her slim waist and small thighs, tracing a subtle hourglass shape. Wow! She whispered. Moments ago, she did not exist. But now she did. Even so, it felt as though she had always been alive. She knew who she was, what she was, down to her identification numbers, facet 2F5L, cut 5XG. She knew what her purpose for living was. And she felt such an urge to fulfill her duties that the very thought of learning about technology all but consumed her young, innocent mind. Get down from there! An order barked from below. Peridot went rigid, quickly making her way down a designated path. Ahead, 3 more Peridots moved in the same direction. Already, they were acquainted, talking to each other about stars knows what. Still, she wanted to reach out to them, wanted to talk to them. But that hope was halted mid-step. She tripped. And a stupid pebble, a stupid clod, was the culprit. She tumbled face first into the dirt, then proceeded to roll down the path, picking up speed during her journey. She bounced and slid, crashed and tumbled, until she slid to a painful stop. Everyone was staring at her. Everyone. She could feel them. 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 snickers. Shame washed over her, a burning in her cheeks she could not contain. Her visors were stained with dust and grime. Slowly, she looked up from her place in the dirt. And as she did, she was greeted by a horrific sight. 2 diamonds were observing from an elevated platform. One yellow, her diamond, and the other red. Yellow Diamond was not amused, frowning with a raised brow. Red Diamond, however, was smiling, crimson eyes glinting with amusement. It wasn't a condescending smile, but a genuine one, filled with sympathy and understanding. A red aura surrounded his arm. He stretched forth a palm, and an ethereal, ghost-like hand descended upon her. It grasped with crimson fingers, lifting her from the ground and helping her to stand. A moment later, the hand retreated, and she found herself missing the warmth and safety that came with it. A few hours earlier, Blue's palace. Pearl stood a distance away, eyes wide beneath her bangs. She had her personal screen in front her. She traced her fingers across its sleek surface, sketching, crafting, creating art. In front of her, both her diamond and red diamond were locked in a fierce battle. She continued to draw, generating an image that captured the essence of what she saw. She focused on red diamond's features, his masculine face marred by a frown. Then she moved on to her diamond's visage, beautiful features marked by a delighted expression. Their riveting battle raged on, with Blue presently winning and Red struggling to gain the upper hand. "You're not giving up, are you, Red?" asked Blue, a glint in her azure eyes. "No, not at all," he countered, stroking his chin in thought, planning his next move. Pearl finished her drawing, capturing a scene she hadn't seen in ages. She inspected her work and smiled at the finished product. Seated across from each other, Blue and Red remained focused. They'd been at this all night, battling it out in a strategy game popular to homeworld elites. So far, Red had lost more than a dozen times. But that was understandable, considering the fact that this was his first time playing. A holographic board, complete with hundreds of game pieces, lay between them. Each piece obeyed their diamond's commands, distinguished by either a red or blue color. Pondering for a moment, Red waved his palm. Subsequently, 2 of his pieces moved, earning him a slight advantage. But Blue was quick to counter, strategically moving her pieces until, finally, the game was over. "Another loss," he said, crossing his arms. "You're really good at this, Blue." "Of course I am," she said playfully. "But you've certainly improved. Maybe after 100 more matches you might stand a chance of winning." She smirked, and Naruto's brow twitched at her joke. She then sighed wistfully. "Stars, I haven't played this with someone in ages." "Yeah?" Naruto inquired. He took a moment to look out of one of the palace windows. Yellow's palace was across from them, illuminated by golden lights. The sun was already rising. He couldn't believe they had been at this all night, having fun talking. Blue nodded. "Yellow and I used to have matches all the time. She's far better than me, though. Even so, I enjoyed the time we spent together, doing this for hours on end." Naruto leaned back in his faceted chair. "And what about White?" She almost burst out laughing, giggling into her palm. "Believe it or not, White is terrible at this game." Her laugh was so infectious, he couldn't help but join in. Below, Pearl was in awe. She hadn't heard that laugh in thousands of years. "Now I don't feel so bad about losing," he said, laughing softly. "Maybe I should go play against White." "Maybe," Blue said. She paused, a pained expression on her face. "I'm sure she'd let you in her head." But her saddened look left as quickly as it came, with her suddenly changing the subject. Naruto frowned. She summoned a diamond-shaped screen, sifting through a long list of items. "Things will be very busy. I might not see you until later today." Naruto kept his eyes on her, still pondering that look she had given him. "What'll you be doing?" he asked. She continued to scroll, reading. "I have some court proceedings to attend to. These normally take time, so I'll be at the courthouse for most of the morning. After that, I'll be overseeing the construction of a new geotower in Facet 10, just outside of the capital. Then I'll visit one of my colonies, Upsilon V most likely. There's also the Jubilee, which still needs much preparation," she concluded, typing something into her screen. Indeed, she was very busy. And soon, it would be the same for him. "I'm curious, though," Naruto said, clasping his hands behind a spiky mane. "What are Yellow and I doing today?" "Well," said Blue, standing from her chair, "I have some ideas, but I'd rather not say much." A knowing smile found its way to her lips. "We do have another extraction scheduled later on." "Another one?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, tilting her head with concern. Was the first one unpleasant? No, Naruto assured. It was just different from anything I've ever experienced. It was still relaxing though. I'm glad, she said, relieved. For a moment, her eyes lingered on him, trailing his armored torso. Broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a narrow, muscled waist. Unlike many gems, there was a certain strength and structure to his physique, and she couldn't help but eye his unique form. Pearl, she began, tearing her gaze away from him. She pulled a hood over her beautiful locks, a look that gave her an air of mystery. My diamond? Asked the petite gem. Compile a list of the most efficient lapis lazulis, ranked by speed and terraforming ability, Blue instructed. Give them to me once you're finished. Yes, my diamond, she replied softly. Oh, Pearl, Naruto added suddenly. Send me the picture you just drew, as well as the ones from yesterday. Pearl dipped her head, a tiny smile on her lips. Oh, of course, Red Diamond. Blue turned to him. I'm sure Yellow will be arriving shortly. Please do try to learn as much as you can, she said, then began walking toward the exit. I'll see you soon. His gaze was drawn to her retreating form, eyes straying a bit lower than they should have. Her flowing dress did little to hide such a perfect figure. The door closed behind her, and he was left alone. Naruto leaned forward, then stood from his chair. He moved to the nearest window. Behind tempered glass, the rising sun showered homeworld with rays of light. Even this early, the capital was brimming with activity. Soldiers patrolled the streets. Various gems went about their business, keen on completing their daily assignments. Above, green warships landed and took off, circling the skies above. After a moment, he moved away from the window and returned to his seat. He placed a palm on the arm of his chair. It glowed, producing a diamond-shaped screen for him to use. He traced his fingers across its clear, crimson surface, sliding to the files he had been reading yesterday. Naruto resumed his studies for a time. He concluded the current section with the carnelian quartz type. Already, he knew that these would be his primary soldiers, partly due on their color scheme. According to gem culture, they were slated to receive more favorable treatment from him, simply because their hue matched his. But as far as he was concerned, that would not happen. Any gem made for him would be treated fairly, regardless of their rank or color. Closing the file down, he moved on to exploring their star maps. He began with Homeworld's galaxy, classified as a spiral. It was massive, spanning over 100,000 light-years across. This was where gems originated, and it was completely colonized. He scrolled through, starting at the core. Most of these colonies belonged to White, hundreds of them. Then, moving outward, he began noticing more of Yellow and Blue's colonies. Besides Homeworld's primary galaxy, 2 other galaxies were also under Gemkind's control. In other words, most organic life had been extinguished from these 3 galaxies. Naruto continued to explore their maps until he arrived at his home galaxy. He quickly located Earth, which was now classified as a failed colony. He exhaled, relieved to see that not much gem activity was taking place around his solar system. Finally satisfied, he exited the star maps. A moment later, a notification appeared on his screen. Naruto rose a brow, then selected the message. His eyes softened once he noticed the images that began to populate his screen. They were the drawings Pearl had made yesterday of Skinny, Jay, and Carnelian. Also included was the one she had just drawn, depicting him and Blue facing each other, playing their strategy game. He made a mental note to thank Pearl later. I wonder how the trio are doing, he thought aloud. Hopefully, Holly hasn't lost her mind trying to control them. Naruto shrugged. He would give them a call later. Thousands of light years away, Holly felt a chill run through her. Surprisingly, she hadn't lost her mind. And things in the zoo were actually peaceful. A chime sounded, signaling her arrival. Yellow Diamond walked in with her Pearl in tow, double doors opening with her arms crossed. Serious as usual, he noted. Her steps were firm and deliberate, radiating confidence in herself and her abilities. Just beneath the surface, her power surged like lightning, barely contained by a body of pure light. Naruto cracked a smile. He wondered, glancing at his palm, if they fought, who would come out on top? After all, her ability directly affected a gem's physical form. Even with all the weapons in his arsenal, he was still a gem, and therefore susceptible to her lightning. "What's with that smile?" she inquired, stopping short of where he sat. Her pearl bowed to him, showing the utmost respect. He kept his eyes on his screen. "Just wondering about something." Arms crossed, she circled to the front of his chair. She leaned close, striking eyes piercing his crimson orbs. "No, do tell," Yellow continued. "I'm curious." Naruto grinned, then shrugged with defeat. "Well, if you must know, I was just wondering what a battle between us would be like." Yellow's eyes widened a fraction, and she leaned away. She stroked her chin, actually pondering the prospect. A battle? What a peculiar idea. Yet a fascinating one, nonetheless. "Don't think too much about it," he said. "It was just a thought. Nothing you should seriously consider." "I'm not considering it too deeply," she replied, "because the outcome of such a battle is already clear." Naruto chuckled. "Is that so? Do I take that as a challenge?" Yellow actually smirked, arms clasped behind her back. "Maybe," she said. "But we don't have the time for such challenges. There's much we must do today, and I'd like to begin as soon as possible." Yellow turned. She took note of the board to her right, complete with game pieces and holographic terrain. This game. I haven't played in such a long time." "Blue told me you were really good," he offered. "I'm still learning. She beat me more times than I cared to count. But it was still enjoyable." Yellow's eyes lingered on the game. Memories of the times she played with Blue, White, and Pink bubbled to the surface. Times she admittedly missed. Though the life of a diamond was a busy one, full of responsibility, the fact that she could, at the end of the day, spend time with those three always managed to ease the burden on her shoulders. "Maybe we could play sometime?" Naruto asked. He stood from his chair. "Perhaps," Yellow whispered, then turned away from the game. "Let's get going." She began heading toward the entrance. Naruto followed as well, moving beside her. Instead of taking a warp pad, he and Yellow walked through the streets of Homeworld's capital. It was a cityscape unmatched by any other. It was the most maintained, the most symmetrical, the most geometric portion of Homeworld. Around them, gems stopped what they were doing to salute. Only when he and Yellow passed did they finally resume their activities. Younger gems, it seemed, tended to linger a bit longer, staring at both of them in awe. "How are your studies going?" Yellow asked. Naruto clasped his hands behind his crimson mane. "Really well, actually. I've finished the quartz section of the files. It was extensive, but nothing I couldn't handle." She was slightly surprised. Red was starkly different from Pink. He had a playful side to him, of course. But it seemed as though he was genuinely willing to learn and take his duties seriously. She liked that. "Good," she said. "However, make sure you understand the distinction between Era 1 and Era 2 gems. In fact, you will soon need to consider Era 3 gems being added." "Era 3? Yellow crossed her arms. "Indeed. We are in a new era, I'm sure Blue has mentioned it. I suspect the official announcement to be made during the Cosmic Jubilee. And frankly, I'm curious to see the effects you will have on gem production." "In what ways do you think things will change?" Naruto asked. A thoughtful look crossed her features. "For one, you are much more powerful than Pink. I suspect this will have a profound impact on the capabilities of even the lowest class of gems. But for now, only time can tell what will occur." He considered her words, then glanced around, once more stricken by the sheer magnitude of the buildings around them. Both he and Yellow were tall, taller than all gems, but even they were dwarfed by the towers that defined the cityscape. "This place never gets old," Naruto remarked. "Of all the planets I've been to, nothing compares to Homeworld." Yellow smiled a bit, crossing her arms. "Blue designed most of these buildings, you know. She's the mind behind every piece of architecture in the Empire. With technology, she's not as adept. But give her a city to design, and she'll create a masterpiece." Naruto took note of her smile when talking about Blue. Anyway, we've arrived, she said. Before them, a flight of stairs led to another massive building. Shaped like a pyramid, it was a library. Gems of a more dignified class entered and exited, some walking with pearls behind them. Each wave of gems stopped to acknowledge the two diamonds as they both moved to enter the hub of information. Inside, thousands of shelves housing millions of data stones could be seen. If you ever need information not found in the general database, you can come here, Yellow explained. As a diamond, you have access to every data stone in existence, even the classified ones. If it's history, science, or even music, you'll find it here. That's incredible, Naruto said, eager to see what he could learn. However, before they moved further into the library, they were approached by a distinct gem. She was objectively beautiful, possessing an air of regality about her. Coral hair cascaded down her back, framing her delicate features. She had pink, unblemished skin. Her salmon eyes were deep and full of wisdom. Behind her, a pink pearl and a ruby stood silently, forming the diamond salute. Yellow diamond, red diamond, said the gem, lowering her head. It's always an honor to be in the presence of our great leaders. Yellow crossed her arms. Morganite, she acknowledged, then frowned. You weren't present during yesterday's briefing. The beautiful gem looked remorseful. And I have no adequate excuse, Yellow Diamond. Please accept my deepest, humblest apology. I sent you a report concerning my absence. And hopefully, you will consider my reasoning. Very well, Yellow remarked. I'll have a word with you later. Thank you, and of course, said Morganite. She turned her gaze to Red, eyes glinting with intrigue. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person, Red Diamond. Forgive my negligence, your opulence. And if it's within your interests, I would like to offer you a gift on the Cosmic Jubilee, a welcome present of sorts. That's fine, Morganite. I'll accept your gift, Naruto replied. His eyes narrowed slightly. Though she seemed caring on the outside, there was something more to this gem. A wild persona, hidden just beneath the surface, hungry for power. Morganite beamed, smiling brightly. I won't disappoint you, sir. She turned to Yellow. If there is anything you need, please ask. I am here to serve, after all. Yellow barely acknowledged her words. The ruby and pearl stepped aside as she moved past Morganite, Naruto following. This whole time, Yellow's pearl had been silent, trailing behind both diamonds. As the two leaders retreated, Morganite's eyes burned with desire. Her gaze followed after Red Diamond, lingering, tracing his distinct form from head to toe. She had never seen a gem quite like him before, and her curiosity was aroused. You have some time to look around, Yellow said. I'll be on the 20th level. Meet me there when you're finished. Pearl will accompany you and answer any questions you may have. Pearl saluted. With that, Yellow Diamond entered a platform that took her to a higher level of the library. Pearl looked up, awaiting his orders. You're familiar with this place? Naruto inquired. Yes, Red Diamond, she replied. Anything in particular you wish to locate? Naruto stroked his chin in thought. There was something he wanted to find, more information on the human zoo. But first, show me what this place has to offer before I start searching for anything. As you wish, Pearl said respectfully. She took him on a minor tour. They walked through many sections of the library, and she pointed out everything she could, from literature sections to war documentaries. They also moved to various other rooms containing historical information. Finding something that piqued his interest, he paused at the data stone before picking it up and reading the contents contained within. It was a small, abbreviated history of Erewhon. Browsing through, he learned that yellow had been made before blue, and white originated here on Homeworld many millennia ago. He even found images of ancient Homeworld, taken from space. Back then, the planet was still whole, not broken into 3 sections. They then moved on to another portion of the library. Beside him, Pearl walked silently. Hey, he suddenly said, pausing. The petite gem froze and looked up. Is there something you want to get? I noticed you looking around, even more than I am. And no, she quickly answered. My task is to aid you, and that's all that matters. Not me. Naruto chuckled. Of course what you want matters, Pearl. He stooped down and carefully picked her up, surprising the smaller gem. He placed her on his shoulder. Come on, let's both look for something we want. Pearl's features grew uncertain. She gently sat on his shoulder and looked to him. But I can't. My diamond didn't instruct me to find something for myself. That doesn't mean you can't, though, he replied. She didn't say you shouldn't get something, did she? I suppose she didn't, Pearl admitted. Still, what I want, it's a bit ridiculous. Enlighten me, Naruto said. I want to learn how to take better pictures, Yellow Pearl answered nervously. It was stupid, she knew, but it was still a desire of hers. Something she really wanted to study. That's not ridiculous at all, Naruto reassured. Pearl's eyes grew wide. Let's find data stones about taking pictures. Oh, okay, Pearl said, trying and failing to hide her excitement. Eventually, Naruto found more data stones to study, and so did Pearl. Instantly, she began devouring the information stored within these pieces of technology. They moved to a private section of the library, accessible only by the most elite of gems. Inside, a luxurious lounge could be found, complete with seats large enough for even White Diamond. Pearl and Naruto stayed there for a time. While he sat down on a faceted chair, Pearl relaxed on its armrest. Then, syncing his personal screen to the data stones, Naruto searched for information concerning the humans of the zoo. Their reasons for being selected, as well as any peculiarities they displayed since their isolation from Earth. After finding what he wanted, he copied the files before moving on to the next data stone. 9 large energy sources, encased in bedrock, were excavated from Earth before initial colonization process began. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he read that sentence. Like before, he copied the files, deeming them worthy of further study. Red Diamond? Said a familiar voice. Her words were smooth and flowed with the ease of a river. Pardon my intrusion. Both Naruto and Pearl turned. They were greeted by the sight of Morganite, standing at the entrance of the lounge. She approached his seat with a warm smile. Like before, a ruby and Pearl followed closely behind. The ruby in question carried dozens of data stones, struggling to keep them from falling from her grasp. Hello, Morganite, Naruto greeted. We meet again. So it would seem. She formed the diamond salute, her regal dress fluttering with the sudden stance. But seeing as I do run this facility, our meeting again isn't very far-fetched. I wanted to offer a tour. However, it seems the Pearl has shown you much of what we have to offer. She's done a fine job, yes, Naruto commended, to which Pearl smirked proudly. If you don't mind me asking, Morganite began politely, are things in the library to your liking? Did you have trouble locating anything? Are there ways we can improve? I would really appreciate your opinion. Naruto looked around, then turned to her. Morganite seemed to melt under his gaze, a shiver running through her. Everything's fine as far as I can tell. No issues finding what I wanted. Though, I still need information on various subjects. But we'll save that for my next visit. Thank you for the feedback, she answered, glad to hear his input. I look forward to your next visit then, Red Diamond. She bowed and turned to the exit. Pearl Ruby. Let's not disturb him any longer. Both gems hastily turned away, following after their superior. Naruto arched a curious brow when he noticed the proximity of the Pearl and Ruby. Though subtle, it seemed like they were very fond of each other and trying to hide it. Yellow Pearl scoffed when Morganite was gone. She thinks she's so special because she runs this place, but she's not. She's still nothing compared to my diamond, and to you, of course, she proclaimed, crossing her arms. Naruto chuckled. I'll keep that in mind, he said before standing up from his seat. Let's get going. Yellow's probably waiting for us. Save whatever you haven't read. Pearl hesitated for a moment, glancing at the 3 data stones in her possession. I need clearance before I can store the information in my screen, she said sadly. Well, you could just ask me, you know? Her gaze found her feet. But you've allowed me to do so much already. I didn't want to demand anything else of you. Nonsense, Naruto said, scanning his hand over the data stones she'd been studying. See, barely took a second. Even though it was a small gesture, his actions so far had left an impression on her. It made her feel noticed. He actually seemed to care about what she wanted, no matter how ridiculous, and she didn't know whether to be alarmed or grateful. Her diamond was still the best, mind you. But she supposed red diamond was pretty great as well. Coming, Pearl? He called, already at the door. She gathered up the data stones and rushed to meet him. Pearl stored the information she needed before returning the data stones to their rightful place. Afterwards, she led him to where Yellow was staying. At the peak of the pyramid-shaped library, a single room, reserved for only the diamonds, was revealed to him. He found Yellow Diamond sitting at a circular table, head lowered with frustration. Above her, a three-dimensional projection of the known universe could be seen. Upon the walls of the room, hundreds of scientific formulas and mathematical equations were written, as complex as they were numerous. Yellow? She straightened in her seat, turning to face him. Her golden eyes seemed defeated, a far cry from the overwhelming confidence they normally held. Red, she stated before returning to her work. Come in. Sit. He did as she requested, entering the expansive room. The lights were dimmed, and numerous galaxies floated above and around him, like grains of sand spiraling through the emptiness of space. Despite the sheer number of stellar objects around him, his sharp eyes could pinpoint the exact location of Homeworld's galaxy, and even his home galaxy. He sat down next to her and watched her work. She ran her fingers across a floating screen, inputting specific commands. She applied several complex equations to her work, before running a simulation. Soon after, the holographic universe around them started to move. Billions of celestial bodies began racing away from each other, expanding into the void of space. On Yellow's screen, he could see a timer ticking upward, indicating the number of years that had elapsed. Eventually, this number reached its peak, then slowed to a halt. Subsequently, the galaxies and stars also stopped moving, eventually burning out and losing all light and luminance. The end of the universe, billions of years from now, was simulated in a matter of seconds. Seeing the results of her experiment, Yellow frowned. He watched her silently. He'd never seen her like this, overwhelmed with frustration. She was usually self-assured, calm. But in this moment, he saw a side of her he never thought he would. No matter what I do, it never changes, she said quietly, more to herself. What never changes? The end of everything, of the universe, of our perfect empire, Yellow explained. Naruto's eyes broadened a fraction. Finally, he understood. Oh, I see. You want to stop it, don't you? You want the universe to persist indefinitely. Yellow Diamond nodded slowly. For the first time, she turned to him. Though we live longer than all other creatures, we will also, one day, cease to exist, she explained. Our gems, our civilization, is powered by the very energy of the universe. And as you know, energy runs out, used up, converted into something ineffectual. I don't want to lose this great empire we've toiled so hard to create it. White told us it was an eternal kingdom, and it is my duty, my desire, to solve the problem of the universe's finite existence. This is my one reason for pressing on, for striving for improvements every day. I have to believe that I can find the right equation, the right solution, to end the aging of the universe. That was actually a very commendable dream of hers. Something pure, in a sense, despite the untold millions that lost their lives to the Empire. To preserve the universe, what a notion. Yellow, Naruto said softly. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? She asked skeptically. Yes, you are, he said, chuckling. I'm not as scientifically inclined as you are, but I know a thing or two about these things. Tell me, how long does the universe have left? Yellow rose a brow. That was an easy question. Billions of years, of course. And how long has this empire been in existence? He continued. On a cosmic timeline? Barely a minute, she remarked. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, his fiery gaze meeting her amber orbs. Exactly. And look at the advancements that have come out of the Empire in such a short time. Isn't it likely, given the amount of time the universe has left, that one day this problem will be solved? She nodded slowly, eyes brightening. I suppose you're right. Yellow, he said. You seem to focus too much on the little things, the minute, intricate details. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. Yellow Diamond turned from him to her screens, pondering his words. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was being too hard on herself. And you think I'll find the answer? She inquired. A moment of vulnerability. She could never hope to hide it. Naruto grinned. Of course. You have an amazing mind, Yellow. If anyone can do it, it's you. The tiniest of smiles found its way to her lips. I needed to hear that. Yellow cleared her throat, glancing away. Thank you? Red. After the library, they used a warp pad to reach their next destination, Facet 2. Different from the cityscape of the capital, it was akin to a barren world. Deep canyons defined this part of Homeworld. Numerous worker-class gems went about their business, drilling and excavating portions of rock. Gem injectors moved around like viruses, pumping their substance into Homeworld's mantle. Around him, numerous holes dotted the surrounding area, each marking the birth of a unique gemstone. A kindergarten, Naruto realized. Yellow led the way as they stepped off the warp pad and moved on to a designated path. Many gems stared after them as they walked. Some of them had never even seen a diamond in person. Ahead, a control station was visible. A group of Paradots came to greet them, forming the diamond salute above their chests. They were Erewhon, judging by their height and lack of limb enhancers. Oh, stars! The leader of the group exclaimed. Even surrounded by other Erewhon Paradots, she still towered over them. She had pointed blonde hair and transparent visors. Yellow Diamond and Red Diamond! What a pleasant surprise! It's an honor to have you here. We were just preparing for the emergence of the last group. Please, if you dash. Yellow raised a palm and the talking ceased. You're the chief technician of this unit? The chief Peridot dipped her head. Yes, my diamond. Yellow stroked her chin in thought, glancing at Naruto. Show us the Peridot and Rutiel production reports. Right this way, said the Peridot, leading them to the control center of their operation. It was a bit small, but both diamonds didn't have trouble standing in the open area overlooking the kindergarten below. Dozens of screens surrounded them, displaying charts and graphs. Yellow Diamond read the files. And this is the last group of Paradots, correct? Correct, replied the Peridot. A few are even emerging as we speak. Good. She turned to Red, gesturing to the canyon below. Normally, we don't have to be here in person. However, I want you to see the final process of gem creation. From their elevated platform, Naruto watched as something amazing began to occur. All over the canyon, flashes of light reached his eyes. Hundreds of them, like twinkling stars, blinking in and out of focus. Each flash was accompanied by a small explosion. With every burst of stone, a new Peridot was born, stumbling on their own 2 feet, experiencing life itself. He smiled a bit. Birth, even this type, was beautiful. Most of the Paradots lingered only for a few moments before moving along and clustering together in single-file lines. Already, they knew what to do, who they were. As the flashes died down, Naruto noticed a particular Peridot. She was different, in a sense. As small as most Eratus, but unique in the way she carried herself. She did not immediately leave her exit hole. Instead, she took a moment to inspect herself, to inspect her surroundings, and to observe the world she had just been born into. She quickly snapped out of her stupor at the order of a superior, rushing to catch the rest of her unit. But her efforts were for naught as she tumbled and fell in a comical fashion. So captivating was her fall that nearly all eyes were on her, including Yellow's. The Peridot looked up, catching the gaze of both he and Yellow. She looked so embarrassed. Naruto offered her a small smile, before focusing energy from his gem into his arm. He instantly generated ethereal limbs, similar to his chakra arms, that extended to the depths to help her out of that small crater. Soon after, she quickly joined the ranks, disappearing into a wall of identical paradots. A few more flashes occurred, before all was silent. Is that the last one? Yellow questioned the chief technician. Yes, replied the Peridot. She looked through her screens for further confirmation. Then you will cease all gem production in this facility until further notice, Yellow instructed, surprising the smaller gem. Dismantle the injectors as well. A battalion of quartzes will be here to remove them by tomorrow. Understood? Why, yes, my diamond. It seemed the chief technician wanted an explanation, but she was too afraid to ask. I expect a detailed report concerning this new batch of gems, the diamond added. With that, they moved on from the kindergarten, toward the warp pad they had used earlier. Yellow Pearl was just behind them, walking at a brisk pace, hoping to keep up. If you were wondering, that was the last production of Era 2 Paradots, Yellow explained. I'm presently working on integrating your gems information into our injector formulas. Once complete, we'll begin creating new gems, Era 3 gems. Naruto considered her words as they reached the warp pad. It was only big enough for one diamond at a time. But before they left, he paused to gaze at the scenery once more, taking note of the millions of holes that permeated the rock formations of Homeworld. What was it like? He suddenly asked. When you first emerged? Yellow looked to him, taken aback by his question. Then she moved to join him. Side by side, they stood beneath the midday sun. It was strange, yet exhilarating, a feeling I can't quite explain, she revealed. It was just me and White back then. She was the first gem I ever saw. Things were simpler, in a sense. No blue to make my eyes water. No pink to constantly watch and discipline. She paused, considering her next words. But I wouldn't trade those two for anything in the universe. I think I felt the same way when I first opened eyes, he replied, smiling softly. But you were alone, Yellow stated. We should have been there for you. I awoke earlier than expected, he said, waving her off. There's no way you could have known. That's true, I suppose. Yellow crossed her arms upon her chest, glancing at him. Still, to find your way to Homeworld, to us, that's very admirable. Thanks, Yellow. It wasn't easy, but I learned so much during my journey. I can tell, she admitted. You're different than Pink, but you still remind me so much of her. She finally moved to the warp pad, adding, And I'm glad that you're here. They visited a few more places before going off-world. They stopped by the arena in the capital, then Pink's former palace. It was still being modified to fit his needs, outfitted with modern technology. No longer pink, his new abode burned red, glinting in the afternoon sun. He didn't enter it, not yet. Not until it was finished. Now, like the day before, he found himself on an armed ship. This time, with Yellow. He was seated next to her. Pearl was present as well, standing at her diamond's feet. Unbeknownst to Yellow, the petite gem was busy taking pictures of both herself and the larger being above her. Too engrossed in reading reports, she was either unaware or unbothered. A comfortable silence was upon them, and the melodic hum of the engine, propelling the ship at faster-than-light speeds, was all that could be heard. Continuing his studies, Naruto finished reading on the gem type, lapis lazuli. Upper-middle-class gems. One of the first things he noticed was their beauty. Azure skin like the ocean, long flowing dresses, and wings of water. They were terraformers, used to alter the landscape of any planet with substantial amounts of liquid. What would naturally take millions of years could be done in a matter of months. Most of them resided in Blue's court, but were he to need them, he had free rein to choose which ones he could utilize. While reading, he received a message on his screen. A request to speak to him from the zoo. Distance-wise, they were close to Pink's last outpost, making the transmission possible. He accepted the request without a second thought, and he was greeted by the sight of his favorite Jasper. Skinny's eyes brightened once she saw him. Sir! She exclaimed, before lowering her voice. Sorry, I've been trying to reach you for a while. Is this a bad time? No, not at all, he said, happy to see her. I was just thinking of contacting you. How are you doing over there? You guys miss me? Of course I do. I mean, of course we do, she said quickly, cheeks burning faintly. But honestly, it's been wonderful getting to see our old mates. For some reason, I always thought we would never meet again. Still, even now, thousands of years later, it's like we never left them. We're still as close. I'm glad to hear that, Naruto said, smiling softly. I hope you aren't giving Holly a hard time, but knowing you three, especially Carnelian, I'm sure she's suffering. Skinny laughed a bit. Actually, things are pretty calm. Surprising, I know. And Carnelian's been busy teaching some combat moves to a few of our mates. His eyes widened. Really? I expected Jay to be the one to do that sort of thing. I know, right? Skinny said. But no, Jay's helping some of them practice meditation. And I'm here trying to learn as much about the zoo as possible. So, our hands are kind of full. That's good. Keep yourselves occupied. She took heed of what he said, listening attentively. A moment later, a symbol appeared on the control panel of the ship. He felt a shift in velocity as the craft began to slow. We've arrived, said Yellow as she took full control of her ship. He acknowledged her words and turned to Skinny. Hey, it looks like I have to go, he said. Don't stop what you're doing, okay? I'll visit you guys soon. Okay, sir, Skinny said, forming the diamond salute. Naruto rolled his eyes with a smile, and she broke out into a laugh. Once the transmission ended, Yellow turned to him. Perhaps it would be best to leave the Carnelian and Jasper in the zoo from this point on. Naruto held her gaze. Why would I do that? They're defective, off-color, she stated factually. They could never hope to compete with normal quartzas. You'd be surprised, Naruto added in their defense. They destroyed your robinids, didn't they? Yellow frowned. Nevertheless, they represent the opposite of what our empire stands for. I told you in Blue already, he said, calm yet firm. I'm not ashamed of them. They've proven themselves to me, and in my eyes they are no different from any other gem of their type. Yellow glanced away, moving her hands across her screen. I'm only saying this now before White gets involved. She's not always merciful, not even to us. I appreciate that, Yellow, he said. But if White has an issue with them, that'll be my problem to handle. Very well, she said, dropping the issue. For now. Ahead of them, as the ship slowed, the image of a planet came into view. Naruto leaned forward, eyes glinting with awe. Completely covered in water, this celestial body glowed with aid of its local star. Besides small patches of land, it was utterly submerged, bearing an atmosphere thick enough to support life. What is this place? He asked. Yellow took them in slowly, her ship burning as it penetrated the cloudless sky. This is the reef, she answered. Here you will receive your pearl. Outside, a clam-shaped facility defined their destination. Yellow landed her ship a distance away. Around them, other gem spacecraft could be seen, docked in the same area. Waves lashed at the shore, splashing up the landmass that housed the reef. The spray of the blue sea, the feel of a cool breeze, Naruto couldn't help but enjoy it, crimson mane ruffled by the wind. He and Yellow departed the ship and headed along a straight path. Ahead, the reef stood apart, housing an underground structure paramount to the creation of pearls. Dozens of citrines stood guard as they approached. Quickly noticing them, they saluted and stepped aside, allowing them entry. The double doors opened with hiss, revealing the interior of one of Homeworld's most prized facilities. Inside, 30 or so gems went about their business. They were of the upper class, followed closely by docile pearls. From sapphires to hessenites, a variety of high-ranking gems could be found. Despite their standing in Homeworld's hierarchy, they were still nothing before the diamonds. The moment he and Yellow stepped through the front doors, all activity halted. The gems stood at attention, forming the diamond salute and displaying immense respect. The sea of gems parted, allowing the larger beings to move through. Naruto could feel their eyes on him. Aristocratic gems, despite having more access to the diamonds, still found themselves fortunate to even be in the presence of one. I wonder if I'll ever get used to this, he whispered to Yellow. Her lips twitched upward. You will, eventually, she reassured. They can't help themselves. We do look quite regal, after all. Naruto chuckled at her words as they finally reached the middle of the lobby. All right, place your hand on the scanner, Yellow instructed. In the center, Naruto put his palm on an elevated device. Reading his gem's information, the lobby was suddenly bathed in crimson light. Not a harsh crimson, but a warm, inviting hue of red. Welcome, Red Diamond. I am Shell, said a voice from above. I will be your guide to the reef. Hello, Shell, Naruto greeted. It seems I'm here for a pearl. Yes, I was informed of this earlier. Please, right this way. On the floor, light illuminated a path forward. Ahead, a set of doors opened for him, and a great room of scientific wonder lay before them. Naruto moved forward, entering. Within, dozens of transparent cylindrical containers housed spherical gems. They were pearls, and they hadn't yet taken form. Their unblemished gems floated in these containers, recently created, and stored for future selection. They're already made? Naruto asked, looking around. Arms crossed, Yellow followed him inside. Yes. Pearls are created in a different manner than other gems. Instead of taking form when they first emerge, they remain dormant, inactive, ready to be given the proper appearance and behavior, one resembling their future owner. Dormant? Naruto pondered her words, not completely convinced this was the case. Though they radiated less energy than an active gem, Naruto could still glean a distinct feel from each pearl. Around him, despite being in stasis, despite not ever having taken form, these gems were still unique. It was subtle, but their individuality was still there. Behind them, Yellow Pearl gazed everywhere she could, a sense of nostalgia rushing through her. At one point, she had been one of these pearls. How fortunate it was to have been given to a diamond. She counted herself blessed, just as Red Diamond's future pearl would as well. Welcome to the selection chamber, Red Diamond, Shell said, smooth, robotic voice echoing around them. Stand on the scanner to begin the process. He did as directed, moving to an area in the middle of the room. He stood on a flat, circular device that began to read the information on his gem. Scanning in progress. A few moments passed. Scanning complete. He stepped away from the circular device and back to where Yellow was waiting for him. I will now select the most pristine pearl from our display, Shell said. Wait, Naruto interrupted. Is there a problem, Red Diamond? Are my actions not to your liking? No, Shell. You're doing fine, he said, stroking his chin. I appreciate the help, but I'll be the one to choose my pearl. Though this is not advisable, proceed as you wish, Red Diamond. Yellow tilted her head, arms still crossed. What are you doing? Sleuthing, Naruto said lightheartedly, before turning and pacing. He passed by each pearl's container, sensing, feeling for something different. Yellow watched him curiously, as did her pearl. It didn't take long for him to pause at a particular pearl. His choice seemed random to anybody else, but to him, he could tell that this was the one he wanted. Though dormant, she still affected the environment around her in a way only he, and perhaps Blue, could sense. She wasn't the most perfect pearl on display, but there was a certain spark to her. This is it, he announced. She's the one. Are you certain about this decision, Red Diamond? Shell inquired, ready to continue the process. Absolutely. Very well. Now selecting pearl, serial number 0203991. The container of the gem he picked slowly sank into the ground, taken by Shell to an underground portion of the facility. Now integrating Red Diamond genetic information with pearl 0203991 and finalizing behavioral protocols, Shell continued. This process normally takes some time. Do you wish to wait? No, said Yellow. We'll be leaving. Send us an alert when the pearl is ready. Are you in agreement, Red Diamond? Sure, he said, hands clasped behind his head. Very well. An alert will be sent once pearl 0203991 is ready for use. Thank you for your time, Red Diamond, Yellow Diamond. Please come again. Since the galaxy warp was being updated by a unit of paradots, they had needed to use her ship to get to the reef. A minor inconvenience, sure, but she still enjoyed traveling with him, though she wouldn't admit it. Not to Blue, at least. Because if she did, Blue would never let her hear the end of it. Now, back on homeworld, they headed to Blue's palace, walking side by side. She felt her arm brush against his own, and a wave of warmth rushed through her. It felt nice. While Blue's aura was a crashing wave of emotion, his was like a calm, yet powerful river, coursing through his being, gently touching all that surrounded him. Conversely, White's energy was an unrelenting light, piercing everything without discrimination. So, the key to beating Blue is to anticipate her next 3 moves, to stay a number of steps ahead, Yellow explained, referring to the strategy game. She's very good in the initial phases of the match, but with time, I always gain the upper hand. I see, Naruto said. But what about you? Me? She asked. What's the best way to beat you? She laughed, shaking her head. I'm not going to tell you that. You have to figure it out for yourself. So that means you'll play against me? He asked, throwing an arm around her shoulder. Yellow stiffened at first, then relaxed into his touch. I didn't say that, she replied. Ahead, Blue's extraction chamber was before them. Like yesterday, all 3 of them would be in her pool. Hey, Yellow? She arched a brow. Yes? Thanks for showing me all that you did today, he said, grinning. I had fun. Stopping at the base of the stairs, his arms still around her, Yellow agreed. I enjoyed it as well. Perhaps I did need a day to take mind off of some of my work. They were early, apparently, because Blue was just arriving, her Pearl following closely behind. Noticing them, Blue broke out into a smile. And seeing their proximity as well, her smile shifted into a sly, knowing one. Yellow quickly crossed her arms, staring down the azure diamond. What is it, Blue? Oh, nothing, she said innocently, arms behind her back. You two certainly seem like you had a good time. We did, Naruto announced, pulling Yellow closer, before finally letting her go. You went to the reef, correct? Blue asked. Naruto nodded. Lovely. Your Pearl will be very honored when she finally meets you. Come on, Blue, said Yellow, cutting her short. Let's start. She smirked, grabbing Yellow by the arm. Of course, Yellow. As the 2 of them moved toward the entrance, Naruto noticed Blue Pearl, standing just behind him. He reached down to tousle her light blue locks. I got the drawings, he said. Thank you, Pearl. She looked at her feet, a small smile on her face, even as he turned and ascended the stairs to the extraction chamber. Beside her, Yellow Pearl watched him closely. He's very interesting, she said quietly, so only her fellow Pearl could hear. Behind her bangs, Blue Pearl's eyes were bright. Her cheeks, even brighter. Yes, he is. Blue and Yellow were already in the pool by the time he arrived, chatting idly about work and the state of the Empire. Blue gently brushed through her hair with a comb that had a face and mouth and a voice. Considering all that he had seen so far, Naruto found this to be one of the most intriguing. Nodding to the topaz guards at the entrance, he made his way in. Tubes covered the surrounding area, siphoning the aura of both Blue and Yellow, feeding it to another section of the palace. The experience yesterday hadn't been bad, not exactly. Just different. Something he needed to grow accustomed to. After his first extraction, he realized that if he just relaxed, the feeling of having a portion of his power drained wasn't unpleasant, and could almost be therapeutic. Walking up another flight of stairs, he arrived at the edge of the pool. Yellow was on her screen, though she was still attentive to what Blue had been discussing. Blue beamed once she saw him, beckoning him with a hand. Come on, get in, she called. Feeling more emboldened than yesterday, Naruto removed his armor and breastplate with a thought. Beneath his appearance modifiers lay a sculpted body, similar to the one he'd had as a human. Blue's eyes widened a fraction at the change, diamond-shaped pupils dilating. Against her better judgment, she could not stop looking at him. Even Yellow had turned from her screen, somewhat surprised by his new, armorless appearance. He was unique in a sense, because no one, not even the largest quartzes, or the bulkiest topazes possessed such a distinct, defined physique. It was new to them, and quite magnetic, drawing their eyes from his face to other aspects of his body. Before anyone could say a thing, he was already in the pool, diving in and splashing both Blue and Yellow. Broken from the spell, Yellow attempted to keep her screen from getting wet while Blue laughed at her expense. Growling, Yellow sent a wave her way, soaking the azure diamond more than ever. This didn't annoy Blue, however. Quite the opposite. She giggled all the more, throwing wave after wave toward her fellow diamond. Yellow reciprocated, splashing Blue as well. This continued for a time, until both diamonds finally stopped. "Wait," remarked Yellow. "Where's Red?" asked Blue. As though on cue, his hands burst from the depths of the pool, latching onto both of their arms. With a mighty tug, he pulled them under with a grin. Taken by surprise, they were completely submerged and soaked. It was a rare moment, a brief respite from all the work the diamonds had to face on a daily basis. Only here, in the privacy of Blue's pool, could they let loose and release any pent-up frustrations they had. However, even so, when Pink was still on Homeworld, she had never mustered the courage to submerge both Blue and Yellow. That was a feat only Red Diamond had accomplished. And surprisingly, they didn't seem to mind his actions, because it reminded them of Erewhon, when things had simpler. Eventually, the splashing ceased, and all three of them settled in. It was silent, yet comfortable. Yellow went back to looking through her screen. Blue continued to comb her beautiful locks. Naruto was between them, waiting at the edge, feeling a portion of his power leave his body with every passing second, where it would be used for the creation of the next generation of gems. The pearls were close by, arms clasped behind their backs. All in all, things were pleasant. Peaceful. At least, until she came in. Naruto looked up as White's Pearl approached them. Her expression was blank, devoid of emotion. She moved efficiently, and each step she took had a purpose behind them, predetermined by White Diamond's will. "Red Diamond," spoke the Pearl. Everyone turned, her arrival shattering the calmness of moments ago. "White Diamond has a message for you." Naruto arched a brow. "A message?" "Yes, indeed. To solidify your standing in the authority, your very own ship will be presented to you during the Cosmic Jubilee." The Pearl's gem began to glow, shooting a projection from her chest. And it showed the image of a massive ship being constructed on one of White Diamond's colonies. After his mission to the Land of Waves, she took him on a trip. Something to clear his head after all he had experienced. To his young mind, it was the most incredible thing he had ever seen. Inside her ship for the first time, a blue planet was before him. It glowed beautifully, glinting against the blackness of space. A supercontinent containing the great nations stood against oceans of blue, housing all of humanity. "This is incredible," Naruto breathed. He sat upon her shoulder, leaned against her neck. She smiled, looking past transparent metal. "It is," White said warmly. "I promised to show you the stars, didn't I?" "You did," Naruto beamed. He gazed ahead, into the void of space. "On Earth, everything's so big, so important. But looking at things from here, it all seems to disappear. All the fighting. All the conflict. All the death." "You wish for a peaceful world?" White inquired. "I think so. I mean, that's better than constant fighting, right?" "Indeed," she affirmed. "In fact, I desire a similar thing, Naruto." "You do?" he asked. She nodded once. Her eyes began to glow, piercing into his very soul. He shivered beneath her gaze, for he was bare before her, exposed. With a wave of her hand, her ship turned away from Earth, to where he could now see a beautiful universe filled with shimmering stars and spiraling galaxies. "I will shine my light upon all things, extinguishing imperfection for eternity. And you will be a witness to it, my maelstrom. To the universe I create." A rocky planet approached with every passing second. The void of space was before her, and it was a familiar sight. So familiar that it almost felt like home. She found herself on a ship most of the time, traveling to and fro. Wherever Yellow Diamond deemed necessary, she would be there. Endless missions. Countless assignments. This was her reality. But she didn't hate it though. She enjoyed the fact that she was needed, that she was known by the upper echelons of Homeworld, despite being a quartz soldier. Still, as she gazed upon this planet, unbidden thoughts filled her mind. Thoughts of Earth. What was meant to be her colony, her home, somewhere she could be proud of, had devolved into a state of war and chaos, ending with the shattering of her diamond. She still burned at the thought. And the very fact of being unable to protect her creator left her feeling like a failure. She was strong. She was the best. The ultimate quartz. She emerged remarkable, in spite of the garbage that surrounded her. She beat the odds, hit the mark. But deep down, far deeper than even she knew, Jasper didn't quite like herself. The roar of an engine reached her senses, snapping the quartz from her stupor. She frowned, seated at the captain's seat. Around her shoulders was a high-collared cape. Brown in hue, it barely concealed her powerful arms that could crush any foe into dust. Beautiful hair spilled past her neck, beige locks glinting against the lights above. Her gem, squarely upon her face, stood hard and proud, unbroken for thousands of years. "Careful," she growled. The pilot, a lone nephrite, stiffened. Sorry, Jasper." She ignored the reply, resting her cheek against her fist. Bored. She was very bored. She retrieved a screen and tried to read its contents once more. Her brows twitched, not liking the length of this report. She was a soldier, not a damn peridot. She didn't care about the intricacies of her next mission, not really. Give her an order, something fight, not a book to read. Mining colony, she read, skimming through the pages. Promising mineral deposits, plagued by increasing attacks? She rose a curious brow, continuing. Aggressive organic creatures. Oh? Her eyes narrowed with budding anticipation. She had been on duty for several months now, stationed at the furthest reaches of the third galaxy. Things had been uneventful, and she missed the taste of battle. But looking at things now, it seemed like this mission would be a promising one. Jasper clenched her fists as they penetrated the upper atmosphere. The nephrite took them through dense clouds at hypersonic speeds, slowing the spacecraft as a tower came into view. Surrounded by walls, this mining station shined brightly, possessing a golden color that mirrored the diamond that owned it. The facility itself was massive, spanning hundreds of meters, and numerous gems went to work, drilling and excavating. With weapons drawn, thousands of quartz soldiers and numerous ruby squads stood guard, both on top and outside the walls. She whistled at the sight. This must be important, then. All these soldiers stationed here, and on a mining colony, no less. She wondered what sort of minerals were being pulled from the ground. She shrugged. That was none of her concern. She was here to fight. She was here to prove her worth once again. The ship landed at a hangar. She stood, cape flowing to her waist. The nephrite glanced away as she walked off the ship, flinching with every step the soldier took, steps that made the small craft tremble. Outside, the activity was relentless. Dozens of green warships landed, offloading hundreds of soldiers before soaring away, presumably, to gather more soldiers. There was an air of urgency among the gathered gems, an urgency she had not seen in months. A familiar yellow agate was there to meet her, flanked by 3 citrines. Jasper towered over all of them, even the agate. "Jasper," greeted the gem. She too wore a cloak. Her golden hair was short, a faceted stone glinting upon her forehead. "Agate." She formed the diamond salute. Though she was certain she could beat this gem into the dirt, Jasper still acknowledged her rank and showed the utmost respect. "I'm surprised you came in person to meet me." The citrines, she noticed, were staring at her. Awed yet nervous. "We've been through many campaigns together, Jasper," Agate stated, arms clasped behind her back. "There's no need to act like strangers. Now come. We have much to discuss." She dismissed the citrines with a wave of her hand. Jasper fell into step with her, and they traversed the lengthy halls of this facility. Soldiers marched in single file lines, entering and leaving through various doors. They all had their weapons drawn. The majority of them were citrines, but she saw a number of onyx and amethyst gems, even a handful of jaspers. As they moved, many eyes were upon her. Jasper could feel them. They knew who she was. Most quartz gems did. Only a few warriors could hold their own against her. And she was an asset, a force that could turn the tides of any battle. Around them, the station appeared damaged. Large portions of the walls were missing, and circuitry and wires sparked incessantly. A number of technicians were hard at work, scrambling to fix the destruction that defined this mining colony. They were silent for a time, before Agate finally spoke. "You've read the reports?" "For the most part." Jasper shrugged. "I received the notification to come here not too long ago." "Then you're somewhat aware of the situation," her superior said, a grim expression crossing her features. They entered an elevator, which took them to the highest level of the facility, to the control room. Atop the tower, the entire station was visible. Agate moved to a window, placed a hand against the reinforced glass. "These organics have been relentless," she hissed. "We've lost many soldiers while trying to preserve this outpost. It's important to Yellow Diamond, you see. And my very reputation is at stake here." Jasper crossed her powerful arms. "I understand, Agate. We wouldn't want to tarnish your pristine record, now would we?" she taunted lightly. Politics of the higher class gems. Jasper could never wrap her head around it. So, she didn't try to. Instead, she moved to stand beside the gem in charge. "All right then. Tell me exactly what we're facing." Homeworld Yellow's palace. Naruto leaned back against his chair, crimson eyes focused on a screen. Or perhaps, a better description would be, multiple screens. Surrounding him were dozens of clones. They read through the remaining files he'd been assigned. His replicas were smaller, and seated in various parts of Yellow Diamond's personal study. It was a beautiful room, he noticed. Many shelves housed even more data stones, and powerful quantum computers were mounted upon the golden walls. Thankfully, Yellow trusted him enough to leave one of her private rooms open. And just like he had done with Blue, he spent the night with her. They talked until morning came, about topics of every kind. Though she was more serious than their fellow Azure Diamond, Naruto found that he enjoyed his time with Yellow. She was incredibly smart, and her theories and concepts had rattled his mind as she spoke. Her eyes had been bright while she explained her scientific discoveries, and he knew she was glad that someone was actually willing to listen to her ramble through the night. He found himself smiling as she spoke, even as the sun rose in the distance. She left hours ago, beginning her day early. And here, left to his own devices, he concluded everything that was left to know about gem types. The document had contained tens of thousands of lengthy, detailed pages, but he had finished it in a matter of days. Now, he was creating plans for the future. Naruto stroked his chin. Utilizing Yellow's computers, he rendered a detailed map of Homeworld's galaxies. His eyes roamed the direction of expansion, and a thoughtful hum escaped his lips. "As I thought," Naruto mused. Homeworld expanded exponentially. Like a stone formed ripples in a pond, so did the Empire extend its reach across the universe. They did not veer off in random directions. Their conquest was orderly, uniform, and predictable. This meant he had some options concerning the fate of the Empire. His primary goal was to change Homeworld society from within, as much as he could. This was Plan A, and he hoped Gemkind would be receptive. Worst case scenario, if all else failed, he would need to turn against the Empire, halting their ceaseless expansion and destruction of organic life. Now, this wasn't to say that he believed all organic life was innocent. Certainly not. He had killed and would not hesitate to kill anyone who threatened the lives of the innocent. However, at the moment, he was too weak to alter the Empire by force. As powerful as he was, he could never hope to defeat billions upon billions of gems on his own. Not yet, at least. So, Plan A was in action, changing the Empire from within. If he failed, then... Naruto grimaced. He didn't want to think about Plan B. The very plan that involved him fighting Blue, Yellow, and White for the survival of life in the universe. Such a thought pained him, even though he hadn't been here for long. The innate bond between diamonds was a strong one. He was beginning to care so deeply for yellow and blue. And white. Well, he had always loved her. She was the first person that ever believed in him. The first person to ever accept him without judgment. And despite what she did at the end of the Shinobi War, he knew that he would never stop loving her. Lost in thought, he didn't notice as Yellow Diamond walked in. Holding a file, she paused for a moment, brows rising with intrigue. Her study, it seemed, had been overrun by multiple, smaller replicas of Red Diamond. They sat at every corner of the room, vigilantly reading the contents within their screens. What an interesting ability, Yellow thought, analytical mind contemplating the uses of such a power. Her gaze soon found the original. Seated at one of her desks, he was engrossed in his work. His handsome features were intent, focused. He did not appear to notice her arrival. So she drew closer, looming over him with a hand on her hip. "You're still here?" Yellow inquired. He looked up, smiling as he saw her. And she found herself growing fond of that bright, beautiful smile of his, though she would never admit it. "I thought Blue wanted to see you." He rubbed his crimson mane, chuckling. "That's right. Guess I got a little carried away." A moment later, his clones began to disappear, leaving plumes of red smoke behind. All the knowledge they had absorbed instantly filled his mind, a rush of useful information. "Well, at least I'm finished with all the files I'm supposed to read." "Already?" Yellow said, eyes widening. Yes, he was certainly different from Pink. Naruto nodded, then asked, "What about the briefing?" "It will begin shortly. I only came back to check on something first." Yellow walked to the back of her study. She pressed a keypad, then retrieved a number of items from a concealed compartment. "I still want you to sit in on this meeting, Red," she continued. "You'll be conducting briefing with your gems in the future, so it's best if you see what they entail." "I'll be there," Naruto promised. He closed the maps he had been observing. Yellow returned to him and summoned an item from her gemstone. "Here, I want you to have this." She handed something to him. "I'll see you soon." Naruto inspected the device, studying its compact design. A diamond communicator, a direct line to any member of the authority. It glinted in his palm as Yellow left her study, heeled shoes echoing through the beautiful room. "Let's review this once more," Blue instructed, waving a single hand. An image of a terrestrial planet came to life, projected from a nearby device. "The canyons must be carved to a depth of 30 units. Remove as much of the crust as possible, but refrain from interfering with the upper mantle. Every wall should be uniform, symmetrical on all sides, and smooth to the highest degree." Two lapis gems nodded. One had a screen, taking detailed notes as Blue Diamond provided orders for their next project. For them, it was always a delight to be called upon for such tasks. Just the thought of carving through layers of bedrock, slicing mountains, and shaping planets to the will of their leader made them giddy with excitement. They were a team, an inseparable pair. Since their emergence, they had always been together. They awoke at the same time, and they'd never been apart. Considered some of the best terraformers in the Empire, they strived to maintain this image, completing tasks in half the time. Lapis glanced at her kindergarten mate, smiling softly. Her mate's delicate face scrunched with focus as she listened to Blue Diamond's words. She had always been the smarter, studious one. More abrasive, too. They were in a large garden, surrounded by flowers of every kind. A great dome covered the diverse flora, providing heat and sunlight to each budding plant. It was Pink Diamond's garden, Lapis recalled. Even after all these years, her diamond saw to it that it was well kept and tended to. This place always fascinated her, because nowhere else on Homeworld looked like it. Outside the dome, no vegetation remained. Even before Lapis was created, plant life had been extinct for eons, covered by cities and megastructures across the planet. A warp pad suddenly came to life, lighting up the garden. Red Diamond appeared in a flash, slowly stepping on the soft grass. Her eyes widened. Though he was a distance away, the plants seemed to lengthen and turn in his direction. As he drew closer, flowers began to bloom and sprout. Leaves swayed and plants shuddered, reacting to his very presence, growing and maturing in a matter of seconds. Whoa, Lapis thought. She hadn't seen him in person yet. But looking at him now, she was amazed by how different he was from other gems. His physical form alone was unique, and she found herself unable to look away, even as he slowly approached them. Blue Pearl greeted him with a bow and salute. Lapis nudged her mate, gaining her attention. Then they both mirrored the Pearl's actions. Good afternoon, Pearl. And hello, you too, Red Diamond greeted, regarding them as though they were the most important gems on the planet. Her freckled cheeks flushed a darker shade of blue, and Lapis stammered out a greeting. Blue Diamond paused her instructions and turned to face him. Her smile was bright, and her eyes were warm. Stay here while I speak with Red, she spoke. And they nodded, with Lapis still entranced by the newest member of the Diamond Authority. Blue took him through the garden. It was quite large, even to them, spanning many meters. Plant life of every variety could be seen, from sturdy trees to gentle little flowers. Naruto crossed his arms, glancing back. Lapis Lazuli? He said. You're planning something big, huh? You could say that, she replied, clasping her hands in front of her dress. I've neglected my duties for far too long. She paused at a massive, beautiful tree, blooming with purple leaves. Yellow has been doing so much, while I stood idly by. Well, no more. I'm ready to begin playing my part once again. Naruto moved closer. He plucked a leaf from the giant tree. And you've found a new planet? Yes, she answered. I've had my gaze on it for some time now. Any life? He asked casually. Primitive life, yes, Blue replied, a curious glint in her eyes. More primitive than those humans in the zoo, that is. Naruto held her gaze, and he grasped the leaf in his hand. Isn't this place beautiful? He queried. I must admit, it's very pleasing to the eye. She paused. It belonged to Pink. Of course it did. He smiled gently. I see why Pink created this place. Organic life, though different from us, can be so breathtaking. Blue didn't respond, wondering what he was getting at. Be patient, Naruto thought. He wouldn't repeat the same mistakes Rose did. She'd been too emotional, too impulsive, and utterly foolish when opposing Homeworld's rigid ideals. He had to be smart about this. He had to remember that he couldn't save everyone. The renovations are almost finished, he began, changing the subject. Pink's palace will officially be mine soon. I'm happy for you, said Blue. She gazed upon the large tree with a soft smile. So don't complain when I stop by unexpectedly. And you better have something planned for whenever I'm in your palace. Your palace. Not Pink's. Naruto chuckled. Please, I would never turn you away, Blue. We can have a rematch when everything's ready. I'm confident I'll win this time. Is that so? She teased, recalling the amount of times she had beaten him at Homeworld's most popular strategy game. Well, I look forward to seeing you try. They stood side by side, nearly shoulder to shoulder. She liked standing next to him, Blue realized. There was just something special about having another member of the authority be as tall as her. They could look each other in the eyes, and she felt as though she could speak freely with him, just like with Yellow. And just like with White, before the rebellion. Before she entered her head. Red, Blue began quietly. You and White. She hesitated for a time. Have you met each other before? Taken by surprise, he stiffened unconsciously. Why do you ask? Blue sighed, brushing a strand of silky hair from her face. Well, ever since you arrived, she's been more active. She's made more appearances in just a few days than in the last 2,000 years. And I have to wonder. Blue paused, glancing away. Sorry, what am I saying? I shouldn't be thinking such thoughts. There's no possible way that you knew her before coming to Homeworld. White's obviously happy to have you here, just like we all are. Naruto suddenly seemed wistful. Actually, Blue. He turned to the sky. You're right, Naruto admitted. I've known White for a long time. Before I arrived on Homeworld, I knew her. Even before the rebellion, I knew her. Her beautiful eyes broadened, perplexed by his revelation. How is that possible? An image flashed before his eyes, of him, of Sasuke, arms destroyed by their final clash, a sword through his stomach, and of White Diamond's ship, looming over them, casting an eerie shadow. Naruto started. I won't tell you the whole story right now. It's very complicated, to say the least. But I promise, Blue. One day, I will explain everything, to you and to Yellow. He looked so serious, more so than usual, as though remembering something between him and White. She didn't know what to think, what to feel. But she decided to leave it at that. She decided to pry no further, and they continued through the garden, discussing whatever else came to mind. Instead of using a warp pad, he flew across the planet once more, just like he'd done when he first arrived on Homeworld. He was a blur, an image of speed few beings could perceive. He crossed vast canyons and great cities in an instant. And like that day, he extended his senses far and wide, reaching every corner of this fractured globe. But he felt nothing, no traces of them, no clues of their whereabouts. They're not here, then, he concluded, putting that issue to rest. Naruto arrived at the capital in minutes, having traveled from Facet 11, where the equator was located. He slowed his speed and descended from above. To his right, White Diamond's ship shined like a star. He could feel her eyes on him. Those all-seeing eyes. She watched him from afar, planning, plotting, executing. And he wondered, despite himself, what would happen if he painted her ship orange. He chuckled at the thought. Pranking White. He would make it happen, someday. Naruto landed softly, just in front of his palace. No longer pink, it was a vivid red. The sound of construction, though present, was not as apparent as earlier. He moved across a lengthy, crimson bridge until he reached the entrance. It was much wider than before, taking into account the size difference between him and Pink Diamond. Entering, he was greeted by the sight of 24 bismuths, hard at work, putting the finishing touches on his new abode. The moment he stepped through, they all ceased their activity and formed the diamond salute. He waved them off, allowing them to return to their work. For a time, he inspected the interior and was impressed by the meticulousness of these gems. Few things could match the sheer symmetry and architectural prowess that went into this project. He almost felt guilty, considering that this was Rose's palace. But he shook that thought away. She chose to leave. She abandoned everything, opting to live on Earth forever. This place was no longer hers, because she had left it all behind. He beckoned a bismuth to him. She was the leader of the team, directing her fellow gems. She turned and instantly came to him, arms still transformed into a hammer. A blue screen with architectural plans was in her other hand. You wanted to see me, Red Diamond, she said, dipping her head. Naruto glanced around, arms crossed. I just want to say that you've done an amazing job here, he explained. All of you have. And I appreciate the hard work you put in. Eyes widening, she rubbed her multicolored hair. And no, Red Diamond. It was an honor doing this for you. We're just happy we could be a part of this historic project. I still appreciate it. Naruto glanced about once more. For a moment, he saw tiny gray gems peeking out from behind a crimson pillar. Pebbles similar to Blue's singing comb. They made eye contact, before the small gems shyly scurried away. He turned back to the bismuth. How much longer until everything is complete? Not much longer, Red Diamond, the bismuth replied. We're practically finished, actually. Naruto stroked his chin. In that case, I have a request, he said, and she nodded, eager to hear him out. Though she had a blue diamond insignia on her chest, she was still willing, and ready, for any orders. There is a small assignment I want completed, and I only need about half of you. Considering what you did with this palace, it shouldn't take you more than a few hours, a day at most. If it's what you desire, then yes, I'm willing to get this new project done, she said, itching to do some building. When do we start? As soon as possible. He summoned a screen. Having already written the instructions earlier, he transferred them to her device. He then typed out a request for a ship to transport them to the zoo. A ship will be here to take you. All the information you need is in the file I sent. You'll do great, I know it. He turned to leave, adding, "And thank you?" You're welcome," she whispered, surprised by those simple words. She gazed at the instructions he'd sent her. Instructions for renovating Pink Diamond's human zoo. Yellow Diamond's palace. Situation room. Late. He was very late. Her eyes scanned the gathered gems, taking them in with a sharp gaze. They were mostly emeralds and hessenites, a handful of agates, and one morganite. These were some of the highest-ranking gems in her court. They sat below her at a diamond-shaped table, each holding a screen and listening intently to the progress reports. Yellow sat upon a golden chair, on a higher platform, her leg crossed. Next to her, a red seat of equal size was visible, but empty. She wasn't angry, though. Not quite. While she was tasked with orienting him to homeworld, Blue also shared the same responsibility. So, maybe he was late because Blue had a pressing issue to discuss. Maybe Blue was even teaching him about other aspects of their culture that she might have missed. Or perhaps he preferred spending time with Blue rather than with her. Yellow frowned, dismissing such a petty, ridiculous thought. And as she did, he finally arrived. The massive doors slid open. Red stepped in, crimson armor glinting radiantly. He immediately turned to her, an apologetic look in his eyes. All the gems stood the moment he entered, forming the diamond salute. "Nice of you to join us, Red," Yellow said, as she gestured to the seat next to her. "It's good to be here." He moved closer and sat down. Below him, Yellow Pearl was busy typing notes. Naruto observed the gathered gems, noticing they were of a more militaristic pedigree. Strangely, though, Morganite was present. She caught his gaze, a pleasant smile on her lips. "You may continue, Admiral," Yellow announced, and everyone took their seats. "Certainly, my diamond." "And welcome, Red Diamond," an emerald replied. She was tall, taller than most. Her gem took the place of her right eye, and she exuded great power and ability. While everyone remained seated, she alone stood, holding a green screen in her hand. "As I was saying, the Empire is experiencing a period of unprecedented prosperity." She glanced at her device, reading. "There are more colonies being created at this point than at any other time in history, thanks to the efforts of our luminous diamond. With a standing army of over 1 billion soldiers, we stand in a position of dominance none can match. Homeworld, despite its age, continues to produce gems, unlike many other terrestrial planets we've encountered. And lastly, of course, the 305th crystal system is faring well, despite an increase in energy demand and the relative newness of its colonies." She concluded and bowed her head, taking a seat. This was Emerald, a gem in charge of hundreds of ships across the Empire, and one of the most prominent members of Gem Society. Naruto watched her closely, appraising her from afar. "Very good, Emerald," said Yellow, leaning back on her throne. "Are there any concerns regarding planetary security?" It was a chance for anyone to speak. Yellow was a hard gem, unyielding at times, but she still respected the input of her subordinates. At least, the highly ranked ones. "Not at all, my diamond." It was a hessenite. She stood and saluted. She was just as imposing as Emerald, a rectangular gem upon her chest. Her amber skin seemed to glow in the golden light. Arrayed in a glittering, high-collared cape, she was the epitome of a homeworld elite. "Despite the spread of our forces across the Empire, it is an undisputed fact that no enemy of external origin has come within 100,000 light-years of homeworld." Everyone seemed to nod in agreement. Naruto crossed his arms, not quite agreeing with her appraisal. "But that doesn't mean it can't happen," someone said. They turned to Morganite, who had spoken up. She seemed so out of place, so different from these militaristic gems. But she had been chosen to attend for a reason, and Naruto wondered if it was because of the vast knowledge she possessed. "Excuse me, Yellow Diamond. If I may speak." "Go on," said Yellow. Morganite stood, coral locks flowing past her shoulders. "Thank you," she supplied. "Now, as you all are aware, I'm no general or admiral, nor am I a frontline soldier. I lack the many experiences you share, and I accept that. However, I have studied the history of our empire. I have also studied the worlds we conquered, their mistakes, their follies. Her gentle voice rang out, echoing all around. We are in an age of prosperity, of unparalleled technological advancement. But like the many worlds we've conquered, we must not be lax with our defenses, falsely believing we have reached the pinnacle of our potential. Perhaps there is nothing in this universe that can stand against the Empire, but such a possibility still exists. And even the smallest possibility must be considered. Therefore, I suggest bolstering Homeworld's defenses, especially in this time of expansion, if only as a precaution. Ridiculous! Hessenite roared. Are you suggesting that the Empire is susceptible to an attack? And from whom? Chatter soon arose, filling the situation room with a chorus of voices. But Yellow calmly rose a palm, and the noise instantly ceased. Let me say something, Yellow. Naruto finally spoke. She arched a brow, then nodded. All eyes suddenly fell on him. Naruto did not stand, but the simple act of leaning forward caused him to garner the attention of every single gem. I'll be brief, he spoke. The Empire is immensely powerful. There is no questioning this fact. But let me offer this perspective. Before I came to Homeworld, I journeyed to many places, further than most red-eye probes have been programmed traveled. I've seen many things in this vast, living universe. And given the very vastness of the universe, I believe it is logical to conclude that there is a chance that something might pose a threat to Homeworld. So, in this particular case, I agree with Morganite's assessment. Morganite's eyes widened a fraction, her calm, controlled demeanor suddenly cracking beneath his defense of her. But just as quickly as it left, her persona returned, a sweet smile on her lips. Yellow Diamond nodded, glancing at her pearl, prompting her to swiftly type notes. Very well, Red. I'll take this into account. Yellow turned her gaze to Hessenite, who had been sending a heated glare at Morganite. Hessenite, your report. She complied, standing from her chair, holding an orange screen. Weeks ago, a mining colony was formed. And compared to the many terrestrial planets our scouts have recently encountered, this one is unique, as it contains massive mineral deposits essential for the outer plating of our ships. Hessenite turned to another page, continuing. Excavation promptly began, and the material extracted was far more abundant than our estimates. By our latest projections, my diamond, at least 1,000 warships can be created over the next 5 months. She paused and frowned. However, in recent days a series of attacks have occurred. Of the 15,000 quartz soldiers stationed there, 5,000 have gone missing, presumably shattered by native, organic creatures. The gathered gems seemed surprised by the news, glancing about and whispering amongst themselves. Was this the situation Yellow Diamond had talked about a few days ago? Naruto leaned closer, interested. These creatures are resilient, Hessenite admitted. They possess a hard, armor-like exoskeleton and many, many limbs. They attack in waves, devouring anything in sight. She projected images of these so-called creatures, and Naruto's eyes widened. He had seen these things before. Insect-like in appearance, they did nothing but destroy, wreaking untamed, unspeakable havoc. He and the trio had once saved a planet crawling with them. However, this event had occurred far, far away from Gemkine's territories. But then, how had these creatures appeared in this part of the universe? Naruto quickly saved the images onto his personal device, intent on showing them to his team when he returned to the zoo. Reinforcements have been deployed, and 2 new divisions should have arrived hours ago, Hessenite assured, providing an update. The situation will be under control after 1 planetary rotation, my diamond. Yellow inclined her head, taking in every bit of information. Make sure the Paradots expedite the Galaxy Warp's construction, Hessenite. And Emerald, I would like a word with you outside, she instructed, concluding. This meeting is adjourned. At those words, every gem stood in unison, formed the diamond salute, then began filing out in an orderly fashion. Finally, only him and Yellow remained. This was a very educational experience, he remarked. Sorry I was a bit late. A bit? Yellow jested, arms crossed. Well, I blame Blue for my delay. Naruto said, chuckling. He stood once a notification reached his screen. The bismuth had already departed, and another ship was waiting for him as well. I'll be leaving now, Yellow. She watched him with gentle eyes. In just a few days, he had become more comfortable with the happenings of their society. She was proud in a way. Before you go, Yellow said, stopping him, tell me something. Do you believe Homeworld will ever be attacked? She uncrossed her shapely leg. I want your honest answer. As Commander-in-Chief, I must know these things. It was her role on Homeworld. Commander of the planet's standing army. An incredibly important purpose. I don't know, Naruto answered simply, moving toward the double doors. But there are powerful beings in this universe, Yellow, beings just as ambitious as you are. With that, he departed, even as he recalled his battle with that sinister, horned man. They came when night fell. Screeching filled the evening sky, and a wave of insect-like killing machines descended on them. The ground vibrated, the air buzzed, and the world shook, reverberating through Yellow Diamond's mining colony. Jasper's helmet materialized upon her head, ready to smash these things into oblivion. She was at the vanguard, for she feared nothing. Her place was on the battlefield. Her purpose was to fight and conquer for the sake of the authority. Darkness suddenly appeared, stray clouds filling the sky. Upsilon XCI was a harsh planet, decorated by protruding rocks that rose high above them. Ravines dotted the desolate landscape, some extending into the upper mantle. Evidence of an ancient, extinct civilization could be seen, destroyed by time and the pride of its leaders. A stray thought entered her mind. One day, would the Gem Empire be reduced to ash, just as this once living world had been? Jasper cleared those musings with a grunt. Foolish, ridiculous thoughts had no place in the psyche of a loyal, dedicated soldier. All that mattered was fighting. All that mattered was serving. The rumbling grew stronger, and she could feel a million limbs scurrying across the dirt. Some around her had already fused, anticipating a battle like no other. Pathetic, she thought condescendingly. Fusion was for the weak, for the incapable. Her battalion was led by a spotted agate. She stood behind 900 gems, her blade glinting in the moonlight. 2 divisions. 30,000 soldiers. They surrounded the golden tower, ready to protect it with their very gems. Warships began firing, circling the skies above. Bombs rained down, green in color. Explosions shook the ground beneath her feet, and Jasper grinned with anticipation. Ready! The spotted agate roared. The emerald smoke cleared. And they were met by a sea of monsters. Nephrite was stiff with nervousness. Her hands trembled at the controls. She did her best to provide the smoothest ride possible, even as they flew through fields of space debris. Not only had she piloted the famed quartz Jasper, she had also been chosen to take Red Diamond to the human zoo. She shivered with apprehension, a bead of sweat pouring down her face, next to her single, green eye. She brushed a strand of brunette hair from her sight. She just knew he was watching her, scrutinizing her every move. Was she doing fine? Were her piloting skills not to his liking? Would he report back to her manager, complaining about her? Stars above! She'd never been so nervous in her life. The ship rumbled as they entered a particularly turbulent area of space. She did her best and maneuvered the ship through the strong gravitational pull of a nearby black hole. Nephrite sighed with relief, leaning back. She set the coordinates, and the stars blurred out of focus. She glanced behind, catching a glimpse of him. To her surprise, Red Diamond was at the edge of his seat, a wide grin on his face. He was smaller now, but this did nothing to contain the overwhelming aura he exuded. I don't know how you do it, he remarked, still smiling. I think I'm a pretty good pilot, but it must take a lot of skill to do this kind of thing every day. You're amazing. And no, not really, Red Diamond, she deflected. I was made to do this. I have to be competent. He settled back in his chair. Well, I still think it's impressive, Nephrite. She didn't know what it was, but in that moment, she felt all the tension in her shoulders melt away, and the rest of the journey was a peaceful one. A while passed, and the sounds of construction could be heard. Naruto turned to Nephrite as the ship finally landed in the zoo. She was very shy, something he noticed from the start. But she had also been an excellent pilot. "I'll be here for some time." He rose from his chair and moved toward the exit. "Will you wait for me, or are there other assignments you need to complete?" She sat up. "I'll wait, Red Diamond. No assignment is more important than this one." "All right, feel free to leave the ship anytime you want." Outside, Holly was waiting. She stood stiffly, apprehensively watching the ship as he descended the stairs. He did not return to his original size, for he felt no need to. "Your Radiance." Holly saluted with a bow. "Welcome back to the zoo." "Thank you, Holly." They moved to the nearest entrance. "Tell me, how have things been?" "All has been well, Red Diamond. Nothing notable occurred since your departure. The humans are doing well, same as you last saw them. And if I may speak freely," she implored. Naruto nodded. "I expected things to be a bit more chaotic?" She quickly nodded. "Yes, chaotic. But I was wrong. Since your gems arrived, I've never seen this place so orderly." She bowed her head ashamed. "I apologize for having such low expectations of your court, Red Diamond. I'm glad you told me that. We all make undue assumptions. But admitting and learning from them takes true character." They stopped at the door, and he grinned. "I just might like you after all, Holly." Her eyes widened. She bowed once more, glad that he was seeing her in a more favorable light. Perhaps this was a chance to boost her standing in gem society, to curry more favor among the diamonds. Two amethysts saluted and opened the doors. Within, the sounds of construction grew louder, and the inside of the facility looked a bit different. Quartz gems moved about, assisting the bismuths in any way they could. They carried debris away and hoisted entire sections of wall. Each of them stopped when he approached, saluting. Naruto gave a nod when he spotted the captain of the construction team, hard at work. "Could I ask what this is all about?" Holly inquired respectfully. "The bismuth showed me the instructions, but I'm still a bit confused." Naruto crossed his arms as they walked past the zoo's entrance and toward the control center of the facility. "I hinted at this earlier, but I won't allow the soldiers to live in such cramped spaces. You have your private quarters, while they don't. I'm creating larger rooms, ones that are big enough to comfortably house 4 quartz gems." "I see." Naruto arched a curious brow. "Do you disagree with this decision?" "And no. Not at all, Red Diamond." "All right," he said, entering the control room. "Send Carnelian, Skinny, and Jay in, please." "Why yes, right away." Twins' moons burned from above, piercing through dark clouds. Flames surrounded her as the battle raged. They were bigger than she expected, nearly 4 times her size. And very resilient. Around her, smoke descended anew, fueled by the poofing of 1,000 soldiers. Weak, she thought. Many of them were younger, less experienced. But that was no excuse. On her first day alive, she had poofed and shattered over 80 traitorous crystal gems. And since her creation, her physical form had yet to be destroyed. A massive black creature rushed her, eyes blank and devoid of emotion, driven by instinct alone. Jasper reared her fist and shattered its exoskeleton with a single blow, plunging her arm into warm flesh. Purple blood coated her, burning her skin, and melting the rocky terrain beneath her feet. She hissed and headbutted the insect-like creature into the dirt. Its large body formed a crater upon impact. She whirled around. Something struck her without mercy, launching her through mounds of rock. Jasper growled and shook the dirt from her hair. A horn was digging into her, penetrating her side. She pulled it out and launched the stake at the nearest creature, skewering its head. It spasmed wildly, before dying in a pool of violet blood. An amber glow surrounded her body, fueled by her gemstone. She blurred forward, crashed into another insect, and saved a fusion of 3 citrines from an overwhelming onslaught. Above her, thousands of these organics circled the skies, wings buzzing loudly. They swarmed a warship and chewed through its circuitry. The ship soon fell from the clouds, slamming into the facility's golden walls. Jasper grit her teeth. They were losing badly. Her commanding agate was nowhere to be found. Gemstones littered the battlefield. Many of them were picked up by these creatures and devoured, shattered between powerful jaws. A swarm surrounded her once again, but she did not hesitate, rushing forward with a roar. "Okay, team," Naruto said. "Tell me what you've been up to." Skinny gave me a brief summary when we spoke, but I'd like more details. They were at a round table. Carnelian, seated across from him, quickly stood up. "Besides catching up with our old pals, I've been giving them some lessons." She crossed her arms triumphantly. "Even though they're all bigger than me, none of them have come close to beating me in a spar. I always send them flying with a punch." "Well, you are the strongest between the three of you," he stated. Physically strongest, that is. Despite her small stature, Carnelian had the brawn of multiple quartz gems. Skinny was by far the fastest, almost able to keep up with him in combat. And Jay was an all-round better fighter, in skill, technique, and strategy. "And you, Skinny?" The petite Jasper was seated next to him. "I've been studying the various capabilities of the zoo. At first, I thought it was just a stationary outpost. But actually, it's a bit like a ship, a flying fortress. Of course, it's much slower than most modern gem crafts, but it can still get around pretty well." Naruto turned to Jay. She stood up, curly hair resting upon her shoulder. "While these two were goofing off," the beautiful Amethyst said playfully, earning 2 glares, "I was busy working with each gem individually. We talked in depth about the war, and how they felt about being on the zoo for so many years. Then I had them mediate, as you taught us to do. Not only to ease their stress, but as a way to put them on the path of learning to be better, more efficient soldiers." Naruto smiled. It was almost as though they had read his mind. He didn't take over the zoo only out of the kindness of his heart, but to create and train a special group of gems, to mold them for the betterment of the universe, especially when he began stretching his influence beyond the Empire. "We've been together for so long that you three can even anticipate my plans," Naruto remarked with a chuckle. "You've already started the process, but I intend to make this small group of soldiers the most elite force in all of Homeworld. No one will even come close." He looked at each of them. "So, prepare yourselves. You're all going to be leaders here." They nodded, accepting his vision for them. "Oh," Jay began suddenly. "How was your time on Homeworld?" "Yeah, how was it, boss?" echoed Carnelian, ever curious. "Busy," Naruto said. "Very, very busy. There's so much to do in a given day. Technically, I'm still on orientation, and I still have much to learn before I take on my role on Homeworld. But I enjoyed it. If one thing's for sure, though, it's that I'll be using clones to get things done faster." "What about that? What was it again? That Cosmic Jubilee thing?" asked Skinny, head tilted. "It's happening in a few days, and all of you will attend. But we'll talk about it later." Naruto scanned his palm against his armrest. A projection appeared in the center of the table. "Right now, I have 2 things to tell you." The trio looked on curiously. "First, a new gem will be joining us soon. A pearl. My pearl, to be exact." Their eyes went wide. "You're getting a pearl?" Carnelian exclaimed excitedly. "When?" "Soon, Car." Naruto crossed his arms. "I'm not a fan of owning another person, but I have to follow the rules for now. Please treat her well when you meet her. She'll be part of the team, not just some accessory." Skinny smirked. "Hopefully, she's more pleasant to be around than these 2 over here." Jay rolled her eyes and Carnelian glared. Naruto chuckled, always a fan of their quips. "And lastly, I want to show you this." He projected something all too familiar. It took them back over 300 years ago. When they happened upon a planet called Altia, a world of beautiful plant life and vast oceans, they had repelled an invasion of insect-like creatures, programmed for destruction. "You're kidding," said Jay, grimacing. "These things again?" Skinny frowned deeply. "We spent months fighting them, and we lost so many friends in the process. But I thought we destroyed the last egg." "Apparently not," Carnelian hissed, orange eyes burning with rage. The hive, a nickname given by Carnelian to describe them. It stuck, because they bore a striking resemblance to insects on Earth, only larger and more alien. Thankfully, they were only spotted on a planet that no longer has life, Naruto stated. Yellow's army is handling it at the moment, but I'd still like to investigate this issue. What's the plan, then? Jay asked. Naruto crossed his arms once more, considering his next course of action. He hummed, then said, Nothing for now. This is Yellow's colony, and if her general believes the situation will be under control, then I'll trust her judgment until proven otherwise. So we'll be on standby. Carnelian groaned. Ah, man. I was looking forward to smashing those bugs one more time. She summoned a mighty axe for emphasis, twirling it with a finger. Put that thing away, Skinny said, rolling her eyes. The red quartz smirked, orange aura flaring. You gonna make me? Careful what you wish for, Skinny replied. Of course, they weren't really serious. As much as I would like to see another match between you two, Naruto said, standing up, I'll be in the zoo. Find me if anything happens. The trio stood as well, dipping their head respectfully. They considered him their friend, sure, but they still held him in high regard as their leader. The residents were happy to see him again. Especially the children. They were the first to notice. Even before he stepped through the double doors, they were already there, clustering together as they awaited his arrival. Their senses were sharp, and they must have felt his unique energy from afar. After many generations, remnants of humanity's power still remained in them. For a moment, he considered the possibility that this was by design. Before the rebellion, Rose had handpicked who would come here, out of fear that Earth would be destroyed in the colonization process. Perhaps she deliberately placed specific humans here for a reason, bearing knowledge of the power they had once possessed. Whenever he returned to Earth, he would ask her. For a time, he played with the children, until the artificial sun dimmed and things began to settle down. Then he sat with them, all 300 residents, and beguiled them with tales of his travels, as well as stories of Earth, their true home. He told them about the vast amounts of people that still remained, presently living out their days on a beautiful, blue planet. They were seated with legs crossed, hanging on to his every word. Naruto took them in with a glance. He noticed the lavender eyes of the Hyuga, the gorgeous caramel skin of the cloud, and much, much more. Naruto mused to himself, wondering if he should teach them about chakra. It was their legacy, after all. It was in their blood. But then, he considered their life right now. It was peaceful, free of senseless death and conflict. By reintroducing chakra, would they eventually return to killing each other, just as the great villages had done so long ago? It was possible, but he would not remove that choice from them. In time, he would have them decide whether they wanted to learn of their innate abilities. For now, though, he would slowly introduce them to Earth culture. To start, he would give each of them a name, not just an identification number. A name? Asked a beautiful, brown-skinned woman. But we already have those. I'm F201. Naruto regarded her with a gentle smile. This is different, though. It goes beyond just a label. A name has meaning. It describes who you are as a person. Their eyes glinted with curiosity, and he told them his human name, Naruto Uzumaki. Hearing his example, they liked it, expressing that it sounded much better than a boring old number. So they formed a line, from the old to the young, eager to receive one from him. Since his first visit, Naruto had observed everyone in the zoo, taking note of their mannerisms, all for this moment, also that he could give them a name befitting their personality. It took some time, but it was worth it. He named them all, leaving no exceptions. Looks like you're the last one, he said, grinning at the lavender-eyed girl. Her brunette hair glistened in the dim light, and she looked on, curious. What's my name? She asked expectantly. He tousled her hair. Hinata, that will be your name. It means sunny place, Naruto explained. You're a ray of light among your people, little one. She beamed, wrapping her arms around his armored torso. I love it, she whispered. I'm happy to hear that, he replied softly, accepting her hug. Though his first love was gone, her name would live on in this child. By now, it was time for bed. The zoo man settled into the soft grass, intent on sleeping under the projected stars. Naruto left them to enjoy their night, and as he did, he was met by the trio outside the entrance. Holly was present as well, fidgeting, blue features pale. "What's happening?" he asked, noticing their urgency. "This," Jay said. She provided him a screen. "They need help, sir." A video was playing, a distress call from Yellow's mining colony. A golden agate was surrounded by flames, fending off an onslaught with her lengthy whip. Around her, soldiers were being poofed. She looked desperate, fumbling with her personal device while trying to fight. "Please, you're one of the closest outposts to us. We've sustained too much damage. I can't reach homeworld," she urged. "We need more support. Contact Hessonite Facet 3L5F, Cut 9LG. Hurry, be before we." She was cut off, skewered through the head, and through her gem by a horned creature. After the video ended, there was silence. Holly trembled, eyes on the ground. Naruto asked, "You knew her?" "Why, yes," the blue agate whispered. "I'm sorry, Holly," Naruto replied, placing both hands on her shoulders. "Right now, I need you to contact Homeworld. Reach out to the Hessonite in charge. Have her send reinforcements. Can you do that for me?" Holly nodded. I'll do that, Red Diamond." "Thank you," Naruto said gently, then turned to the trio. He summoned a cloak. It was black, decorated with red diamonds, reminiscent of his sage cloak. In one fluid motion, he threw it on. "Come on, you three." "We're going?" asked Carnelian, fired up. Skinny and Jay looked just as eager. Naruto nodded once, headed toward Nephrite's ship. "Yeah, we're going." A single ship emerged from hyperspace. It penetrated the upper atmosphere, glinting in the blackened sky. Suddenly, the clouds were parted by a gust of wind. The heavens were split asunder, and the most glorious sound echoed from above, ringing in the senses of all that lived. Despite the altitude, a figure had exited the compact ship. He floated in the night sky, suspended by nothing. He held two spinning orbs that cut through the darkness and shined like the sun. Jasper, despite the carnage around her, paused and stared. "What is that?" she wondered, momentarily distracted. An aura unlike anything she had experienced washed over her, flowing like an endless river. She withdrew from her stupor, swiftly pulled a quartz out of harm's way, taking a hit from a foe that sent her flying through a golden wall. Yet that light did not stop. It shined ever brighter, expanding with every passing moment. Spiraling blades of pure energy were held by this being in the sky, rotating faster and faster. Then he threw them. Two raisin shuriken raced to the surface of the planet, aimed at a swarm of insects. It left a brilliant trail in its wake, a path of destruction that cut through any adversaries flying above. Jasper blinked, and two grand explosions covered the battlefield. The blast expanded for miles around, white in color, rotating endlessly as it turned their very enemies into dust. Shockwaves buffeted the colony, destroying its golden walls and knocking many quartz gems off their feet. Jasper held her ground. She stood to witness this incredible display of power. Her hair was ruffled by the unrelenting wind. Not one, not two, but three shockwaves struck, the last one threatening to throw her to the ground, but she did not falter, watching with wide eyes. Finally, the blasts dissipated. Dust lingered in the air, lowering visibility to near zero. Around her, the fighting quickly resumed. But the enemy's numbers had dwindled significantly. This attack, presumably from an ally, had been aimed further away from the facility, taking out vast amounts of creatures still threatening to attack. So, they still had a chance. Covered in deep cuts, she continued onward, willing to keep battling. But amid the smog, Red Diamond descended from above, shattering the ground beneath his feet. Jasper froze. He landed in front of her, a diamond-studded cloak fluttering in the breeze. His subordinates, 3 of them, were wrapped in bubbles of swirling wind, as a means to cushion the impact from such an altitude. They disembarked, drawing their weapons. An amethyst, wielding a javelin, stood to his left. A puny carnelian, holding an axe, moved to his right. And the most disgraceful of all, a scrawny Jasper, grasping twin sai, stood behind Red Diamond. Jasper knew these two gems. Her defective mates from the Beta Kindergarten. Red Diamond conjured a sword from his gem, a great, blood-red katana that glowed, despite the darkened world. The foe before him was no challenge, for when he swung his blade, the victor of this battle was decided. Chapter end. Tired of watching censored fanfics? Would you like to watch some very naughty, filled with the lemons fanfics without any censorship? I'm happy to announce that I opened Patreon page for you guys, where you could watch Naruto/Deku, 18+ stories without any censoring. Not only that, you can also see the NSFW images of characters of the fics on my Patreon, which I make by myself. So buy your preferred tier and join our community now. Link is in the description.